This may be our last episode. I just don't know. I mean, who does? I fully intend on exploring these lakes and these tales for, well, forever. But we don't really have forever, do we? Eventually, this chapter and our shared story will come to an end. And when that happens, what other choice do we have but to turn to the next chapter and go wherever our new adventure leads us? But for now, let's get to work. Hello and welcome, my Freshwater Friends, to episode 34 of the About the Water podcast, an exploration of high strangeness on and around the Great Lakes. Today, we go up and back, up to the middle of Michigan's Old Mission Peninsula, and back to the middle of the 1950s. Here, we'll learn the rules of the land, whether we're ready to or not, as the sound of a lone tractor's engine echoes about the water. Episode 34. Bookmark. You, and you, you're fired. You were old, you were careless, and you were weak. You have no place on my father's farm. John stared angrily at his trembling, arthritic hands. They'd served him well for the last 6 decades, but over the last few years, a lifetime of hard work had taken its toll. Looking around his farm to make certain that nobody was within eyesight, John sat down on an oak stump in the early morning cool, buried his face in his hands, and began to cry. Time is the gift that we pay for, huh? The unexpected voice sent John jumping to his feet, spinning around and reaching for his utility knife. No need for that, my friend. I'm unarmed. I don't mean any harm. I figured you heard me coming. John looked at the towering man, 6.5 foot tall at least. His clothes were tattered but clean. His bronze skin and black hair were well kept and well worn by the sun. Well, does a heart attack count as harm? John said as he sheathed his knife. Nah, I wouldn't worry about that. You live to 97, the man said, matter-of-factly. He stuck out his giant hand, offering it to John, and introducing himself as Langdon. John shook it, hesitantly, so taken off guard by the man's strange comment that he forgot to offer his own name. Yeah, I don't mean to be rude, Langdon, but I ain't buying whatever it is you're selling. I'm barely making ends meet this season. Langdon seemed amused at the comment, examining his own shabby attire, apparently surprised that John would assume a traveling salesman would dress so sloppily. That's not why I'm here, Langdon said with a chuckle. I came to, let's say barter. John raised an eyebrow. Barter? Barter for what? Langdon motioned towards a homemade burlap travel bag. Oh, just a chance to wash my blanket and my clothes. Maybe a hot lunch? John thought for a moment. The man seemed kind of out of place, but John sensed that he was absolutely no threat of any kind. In exchange for, John asked. Langdon motioned over towards the 2-year-old 1953 Oliver 66 tractor with a hay wagon attached to the back. I reckon you're going to spend the day collecting those hay bales over the hill. I bet together we could make some short work of it. You drive, I toss them on. John smiled at the thought of not having to stop the tractor 500 times to load up hay bales, and with a firm handshake, they had an agreement and wasted no time in getting to work. Seat time on the Oliver was John's own personal nirvana. The rolling terrain of Old Mission Peninsula provided for cool winds that blew across the west arm of Grand Traverse Bay and revealed frequent, sweeping panoramas of the east arm. Seeing the thousand shades of blue expanding across the bay towards Elk Rapids, it just didn't get any better. Memories of himself as a young kid, hanging on for dear life to the bare back of a Belgian draft horse as his father worked the plow it was dragging on this very land, made him tear up. His body wasn't nearly as willing as his spirit to carry on the family tradition. And in fact, he was to be the end of the family tradition. His children were wonderful, John's pride and joy, but they just weren't farmers. They'd grown up and scattered themselves across the Midwest, in Detroit, Cincinnati, and Chicago. With each passing year, John's wife was growing more and more insistent that she and John sell the land while the cherry farmers were shopping for it. She had been keeping her eye on some of the new apartments that were being built in nearby Traverse City. "You know, John, a new chapter ends a chapter. It doesn't end the story." Langdon's voice echoed about an inch from John's ear. Making a flailing and swatting motion around his own head, John turned to see how in the world Langdon had managed to climb onto the back of a moving tractor. But, in actuality, Langdon hadn't. He was walking far back, beside the wagon, tossing bales of hay up onto it as they passed them. When Langdon noticed John had swung his head around, he looked up with a confirming nod and grinned. Unnerved, John turned the volume knob up on the AM radio, which he had habitually tied to the Oliver's steering wheel, and kept driving. John sighed while the tractor ticked itself cool after a half-completed job. "This rain will put me back 3 days while the bales dry out," he told Langdon, as the two watched the unpredicted downpour through the open barn doors. He patted Langdon on the back. "Hey, friend, you said you wanted to wash your clothes, right? Here's your chance." The two shared a laugh. John cleared off a small work table and motioned for Langdon to sit down, removing the lid from a pot of hot beef stew that John's wife was kind enough to prepare for them. John dished Langdon a hearty helping, and the two ate without another word being said. Noticing Langdon's empty bowl, John motioned towards the pot, indicating that he was more than welcome to have another. Looking up, John was startled by what he saw. Langdon was looking directly at him, intensely. His head was jerking in small, rapid motions, while he silently mouthed something that John could not discern. John's immediate reaction was to think that Langdon was playing some kind of a joke, and as he stood up to confront him and explain that it was not funny, Langdon raised his hand, extending a finger towards a figure who had just walked through the barn doors. Although John had not seen the man in several years, he recognized him immediately as his deceased father. John let out a terrified yelp as the figure drew nearer. "This is not your land, son," his father said gently. "I'm proud of you, son. I'm proud of what you've done. You've served the land and you've served your family well. But this is not your land, son. We serve the land. We belong to it. We don't claim it. In time, John, the land claims us. All of us. In time, son." A strange calm washed over John as he suddenly realized he was dreaming. He tried to step towards his father, then realizing he was stuck in the hardened dirt that made up the barn's floor. He was buried in it up to his knees. Looking up, his father's piercing blue eyes were now inches from his own. "You're not meant to fall here, son." John's calm turned into a scared anger as he realized that the voice he was hearing was not that of his father, but of someone impersonating his father. It was Langdon. A loud thundercrack made John wake from his dream. He was sitting at the table, still across from Langdon, who was now staring at him directly with a half smile. John worked at steadying his breathing while he tried to find words. Langdon leaned towards him. "That feeling will pass," Langdon said. "Did you speak to friend or foe?" In a daze, John began to mumble. What did you do to me?" He looked out the door, now seeing that night had fallen. A steady stream of water was trickling through the barn doors. "Did you speak to friend or foe?" Langdon asked again, intently. Father. It was my father. I love my father. I love my father." John looked up at Langdon's towering figure, asking, "Am I dead? I'm dead. I'm dead." With a warm and excited smile, Langdon helped John to his feet, saying, "Not hardly, John. You're almost done. You're doing well. Now quickly, remove your boots and your socks." John did as instructed, as Langdon gently but firmly pushed on his back, guiding him outside into the rain. Under the near-black night sky, John could see that his land was completely flooded. Beneath his bare feet, the damp grass was cool. He felt suddenly connected to it. "I'm not going to let you do this, John." An angry voice cut through the silence as John opened his eyes, leaving him face to face with himself. John trembled as his double raised a pitchfork in the air, threateningly. "I will not let you abandon yourself, John. This is our land. We die here." John put his hands over his head in self-defense, uttering a single word. "Marlene!" Daring to open one eye, John watched as the other hand lowered the pitchfork. "What did you say?" it asked. Marlene, John replied. My wife. Marlene, I choose her, just like she chose me." John grabbed onto the figure's pitchfork, looking himself dead in the eyes. "It's her chapter now. I'm going with her." The pitchfork fell to the ground. With a deep gasp for air, John sat upright on the old oak stump in the early morning cool. The green, yellow, and red of the Oliver tractor shined in the field in front of him, ready to begin its workday. The trailer in tow didn't have a single bale of hay on it. John didn't turn his head to look, but he could feel a presence approaching behind him, and he knew it was Langdon. "What was that? How did you do that?" John asked. Langdon sat down in the grass, taking a moment to admire the beauty of the distant waters peeking over the crest in the field. "John, I don't know," Langdon replied. "Really, I don't. It just happens sometimes when I'm around people. I saw you sitting here crying, and I figured I'd give it a shot." Anticipating John's upcoming line of questioning, Langdon continued. "John, I don't know what you saw, but it's for you, and only you." John watched as Langdon wrapped a fist-sized limestone rock in a piece of fabric. He handed it to John and explained. "You picked this up off the ground a few moments ago when you were in your trance, and you said it was to be given to Daniel and Drew." "Daniel and Drew," John said softly as he ran through his mental phone book. "Daniel and Drew." Not another word was spoken, and with an exchange of nods, Langdon set off on foot back towards the road. The two would never meet again. John could hear the phone ring from his lakefront apartment balcony where he sat with his wife. Her intent to remain put on a lounge chair was crystal clear. "Oh, I'll get it," John said as he went inside. Hello, John here.
Hey, Pop.
Peter, hey son, how are you? How's things in Chicago?
Couldn't be better. You guys all right?
As can be expected. How's my grandkid coming along, huh?
Well, grandkids, Pop.
What?
That's actually what I'm calling about. Things are on track for delivery next week, but it turns out we're gonna have twins, Pop.
Hey, that's excellent. Congrats, Papa.
Thanks. We're excited.
I bet. You guys got any names picked out yet?
Actually, yeah, we got all our bases covered. We're going with Linda Marie first, and then Susan Elaine second if it's two girls.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. How about boys?
Well, if it's one boy, we decided on Michael James.
Uh-huh.
And if it's two, there will be Michael James and Daniel Andrew. Pop.
The story was told to me several times by several of John's grandchildren, some by phone and some by a combination of text and email. And what you heard, in terms of the minor details and quotations, was a sort of average of what was said, with an emphasis on the things that were consistent, and when possible, an omission of some inconsistent minor details. That being said, analyzing the minute specifics of a story that happened 3/4 of a century before it was retold kind of sounds like an exercise in you and I constructing a house, starting with the roof, so to speak. So instead, let's focus on what we do know. We do know that Langdon was a real person, or at least appeared to be. John's wife reported seeing the strange man through the farmhouse window, and confirmed several times that their interaction only lasted a few minutes at most. Everything else, from collecting the hay to the rain to the lunch, just all happened in John's mind. And we do know that what John experienced that day was profound enough for him to sell his home and his accompanying family farmland, in a decision that he never once during his life claimed to regret. We do also know that John was told at the beginning of his vision that he would live to 97, which indeed John did, passing with a grateful heart, and in his own words, not a single thing he would change. This story is something that John did repeatedly tell his 3 children, which then of course got passed to his grandkids as well. Everyone I spoke to had advised that the story never really left the family circle, until now. The family was also kind enough to put me in touch with Daniel Andrew himself, and I had the pleasure of meeting both he and his limestone rock in person. We sat in a small diner in Michigan, near the Michigan-Indiana border, and I got to hear his version, a fourth telling of the family's tale. As it would turn out, Dan was actually the one who insisted that his family shared the story with you and I. He said he listened to this show from the beginning, stumbled across it when we were only a few episodes in. He explained to me that when he did listen, for the first time in the nearly 70 years he had owned the rock, he started to feel something from it. He wasn't sure if it was his imagination, but he believes the rock would hum and change the position in which it was situated, all on its own. But as soon as he and I agreed to meet, all of that stopped. Personally, I admit that when it comes to the paranormal, I'm sort of hardwired to believe first and speculate second. But when I got the chance to hold the rock in my own hand, I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. All of my senses indicated that it was a rather unextraordinary limestone rock, something that neither you or I would think twice about if we tripped over it in a field somewhere around Grand Traverse Bay. Indeed, limestone is said to have some paranormal significance in a number of ways, but what rock doesn't? It's just a rock. At least to Dan and myself, it's just a rock. And it wasn't until Dan made a joke about the rock being an effective paperweight that both of us realized a potential truth. Perhaps the rock isn't a paranormal paperweight exactly. Maybe it's a bookmark. A 7 decades old message from a mysterious visitor. A message that it's time for this chapter to end and for a beautiful new one to begin. A message never intended for John or Daniel, but rather a recipient who wouldn't find themselves wrapped up in this crazy story until decades and decades later. Maybe the intended recipient is you, and it always has been. And if that strikes a chord with you, maybe Langdon's words still ring true in the modern day. It's for you, and only you. And with that, thank you, sincerely, for listening. If this is indeed the start of a new chapter in your life, here's hoping it's as grand, beautiful, and enduring as our Great Lakes. I'll see you about the water.